Lockheed Martin makes missiles. And they make a lot of other amazing products, for example, defense satellites for customers like the US government. So you can imagine these project meetings when they're discussing products is pretty serious and pretty intense. I spoke to a technical fellow at Lockheed Martin about what does it take to successfully contribute in a team meeting. Now, technical fellow basically means he's at the top of the technical hierarchy within the company. And he said there are 3 things you can do to contribute in a meeting effectively and strategically. Let's say we have a meeting, we're going to talk about a new missile, and we need to develop a new product, we need to develop what kind of material are we going to use for this missile. Well, the people who are going to go do the research, they're going to be the people, for example, junior engineers, right? Because they're the ones with the feet on the ground, they can go collect the data about the different materials. But he said, here's the thing, is when you speak in a meeting, unless you're a very senior person, the last thing I want to hear, he said, is I don't want to hear your opinions. The last thing I want to hear is your opinions because you don't have you haven't been there for 10 years, 20 years, so your opinion is not necessarily going to be that valid, particularly relevant to the opinions of senior management, and everybody's got opinions. So he said was, what I'm really looking for in your contribution, if you're a junior level guy or a lower mid-level guy, is a focus on the data. That's where your ability to contribute is. He says, so okay, you'll bring in the data, I'll see engineers bring in data on the different materials. He's like, but here's the thing is that's not really that great. If you can bring in data, great, you've done some research, you're like a Google spreadsheet, right? He said, what really makes an effective share though, is not just sharing the data, but sharing the results. What are the conclusions? When you synthesize that data, what is the meaning of that data? For example, you might look at all these technical stats and you say, okay, so this missile material will work under these conditions, this material will work under these conditions. So essentially what you're doing is you're taking the data and synthesizing it. That's number 2. So he said, number 1, you focus on the data. That's your ability to really contribute meaningfully and concretely in this meeting. Number 2 is you synthesize that data to really explain what this means to the audience based on the data you've collected. But he said, even then, I'll see somebody come in and they'll say, okay, this material is the strongest material to work in the most use cases, so we should definitely go with this material. It's the strongest. And he'll turn to that junior engineer and he'll be like, well, okay, how much does that material cost? And he'll find, and this is where he says, this is where you can really tell if somebody's going to get promoted in the company or not. He said, if that person doesn't know the costs, what it signals to me is he doesn't have or she doesn't have the perspective on the bigger picture that we're building a product that we need to sell at a competitive price for our customers. And so if they can't name the cost, they're not looking at the whole product opportunity. And so I know they're not going to get promoted. They don't have the perspective, the management perspective to really see the whole picture. But what I really want to see is I want them to not only analyze, okay, here's what this means and this means, but I want them to synthesize it from all the boundaries of a project. For example, this is the strongest under these use cases and it costs this much. And if we look at this, here's the cost, here's the strength. And if we take in all those variables, the optimal material looks like it could be this. And so you've really taken the bigger picture, looked at the context, not just the variables of the one thing, strength in this case. And he said, when you can do these 3 things, if you can focus on the data rather than your opinions, if you can synthesize that data into meaningful conclusions for your audience, and if you really have a big picture perspective on what will make this whole project successful and not just this narrow vision, he said those 3 things, he said not only are those people going to be promoted, but they're going to be recognized by management and they're going to continue to flourish in that company. So when you think about strategically engaging in your next meeting, make sure you focus on these 3 things: data, synthesis, and the bigger picture. And that way you too will be successful.